recognition of First United Methodist Church for donation of school supplies. Yeah, okay, yeah.
The Board of Education would like to extend its heartfelt thanks to the First United Methodist Church for spearheading the 2024-25 school supply donation initiative, along with their many community partners. We are deeply grateful for your generous donation of school supplies for students from pre-K through 12th grade. Your kindness has ensured that every student starts the school year with the tools they need to succeed, leveling the playing field for all. We recognize the dedication, time, and effort that goes into making this project a success, and our families across USD253 are truly appreciative. Thank you for being here tonight and for your continued support of Emporia Public Schools and the families we serve. Thank you.
Okay, next is our program highlight for tonight, Walnut Elementary.
All right, we have a great program. We have Mrs. Samantha Prios, second grade teacher at Walnut Elementary, who will be emceeing this and introducing everyone. And we have Mrs. Jamie Dakin in the audience, who's our principal at Walnut Elementary.
Unity of some things that we do. There we go. Our event is unique because we take pride in teaching about different cultures in our building. We have every grade level designated to a culture that is based off of our students' demographics. We also have the students take pride in their learning as well, where after we teach about the cultures, we have a big event where parents are able to come and just families of our school. They're able to walk around, learn about different cultures, and the students take pride in sharing what they've learned at this event and things that they've created too. This is something that we have really tried to switch our framework into believing that this is a mindset, not just one day event that we do. So we have really changed our perspective and tried to implement cultural diversity and inclusion with a lot of different things that we do in our building. One thing that we make sure that we do with this event is we incorporate many different community members. Some of our community involvement has been the Emporia Public Library. We've had Hispanics of Today and Tomorrow. We have partnered with ESU, their international student program. And we have also had local artists and other local businesses. This year, something exciting that we did implement is food trucks. So we really wanted to be able to have our students experience different cuisines that they have not been able to experience outside of school. And we also like to have the community involvement so we can make sure that our students can experience things that they maybe don't when they leave school. So that is one way that we've been able to do that. Another way that we show our mindset and how this is something that we implement daily and throughout the year is something that we do each day at school, and I'm going to allow Tammy Eyre to take over to tell us a little bit more about that.
Ciao, ni hao, konnichiwa, jambo. These are just a few of the ways that we've learned to say hello from around the world. So currently there are over approximately 7,000 spoken and sign languages throughout the world. So in an effort to bring continuous diversity to our schools and into our classrooms, we focus on a country a week. So just to kind of give you an example, up there is an example of our country about France. So we of course always incorporate the flag. I had a kindergartner last year that knew over 300 flags. So it was very inspirational for us to keep going with the flags, especially with the younger grades. They don't necessarily know how to read all the words, but they can certainly recognize a flag. So then of course we always do a map from around the world. So class, if we're traveling to France, are we gonna fly? Are we gonna go by boat? Are we gonna go by car? Fly. Of course we're gonna fly. Do they speak English in France as their main? What is their native language? Do you guys remember? French. Can you turn to a neighbor and say bonjour? Then maybe the following day we would talk about cuisines or some type of cultural aspect that is unique to that country. So class, the first one on it is escargot. Would you guys like to eat snails? Thumbs up, thumbs down. No way? How about the croissant? Yeah, of course, that one's going to be a popular souffle, of course. And then, of course, we would also talk about some natural landscapes or some important significance that happens in France. We also try our best to tie it back into our country. And so we talk about the Tour de France, and then we talk about our unbound gravel here in Emporia and kind of make those connections. So those are just some examples. We do it all through K through 5. And it is at the teacher's discretion to implement it however, whenever, in whatever way that they choose to do that in their classroom. But it's just another example of creating that diversity throughout the year. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Emily.
All right, so another way that we have implemented this throughout our school too is actually me and Miss Air last year applied for a grant to start a Spanish club. And so this came from just seeing that we had a high population coming in with non-English speakers and students and families. And it really was the kids that and the other families at our school that they were like, we want to know how to communicate better with these kiddos. And so through that, Miss Erin and I kind of were like, we should start a Spanish club. And so we did apply for that Hopkins Foundation, and we were granted that grant. And we did a little trial run in April of just kindergarten and first grade. And then this semester has been our first full time. So we started in September. We'll go till November, Tuesdays and Thursdays. It's just 30 minutes after school. But one of the really cool things about it is we've partnered with ESU. So we have teaching students and Spanish majors who have come, and they're actually teaching it. So me and Miss Air kind of are just there hanging out and being extra support, but they are helping with lesson plans and teaching it with the kiddos. And we've split them K2 and 3-5. So we're in two different spaces kind of learning, and the kids have been so excited. And to start off the year, we kind of focused on Spain, where Spanish originated from. And so we learned about them, and we also got to present all of their artwork and everything at Multicultural Night.
Now we are going to have some of our students come up to share a little bit about what they have learned with our different cultures this year and some of their favorite moments from our Walnut Around the World event. Our first one is going to be Will.
Hi, my name is Will. I am in first grade. My class studied Ecuador. They have really interesting foods like empanadas and ceviche. The world's tallest capital is in Ecuador. My favorite part about Multicultural Night was going around all the different countries and checking them out. I also love the donuts from Kazakhstan.
Good job, Betty. Okay, next up is Brecklin.
My name is Brooklyn. I'm in second grade at Walnut. My grade learned about Nicaragua. Their main language is Spanish. Their younger children attend school in the mornings, while older children go in the afternoons. Younger children have about 30 to 50 kids per class. They wear uniforms to school. Most kids rarely go to high school. A common food is a naca tamale. It is similar to a Mexican tamale, but is wrapped in a banana leaf instead of a corn husk. Oh, yeah. Last year, I liked getting to do crafts from the country I learned about to teach others about it. This year, I like seeing the performances. My favorite was learning how to dance some Colombian dances.
Next up is Lillian.
Hi, my name is Lillian. I'm in third grade. We learned about Japan at school. All ages learn the same thing in their own classrooms. They have $100 yens that actually equal $100. They have over 1,000 earthquakes every year. Japanese people use origami as art. Last year at Walnut Around the World, there were people who came and danced for us. This year, community organizations came like the library and played games with us. Collecting stamps from the different countries in my passport was fun.
And next is Avia.
Hello, my name is Avia. I'm in 4th grade at Walnut. We learned about El Salvador. In El Salvador, they play a lot of soccer, but they call it football there. Their main dish is a pupusa. El Salvador has 20 volcanoes. The word El Salvador means Holy Savior in Spanish. Another 4th grader I know is from Walnut. His family helped build a restaurant there. We got to watch a video on how they built it. At Walnut Around the World night, I enjoyed seeing traditional clothing on display from El Salvador. I also like seeing my friends' artwork from the different countries.
Next up is Aubrey.
Hi, my name is Aubrey, and I am in 5th grade at Walnut. We learned about Colombia. The women in Colombia wear flowers in their hair and really pretty ruffled dresses. One of the most popular sport they play in Colombia is football, which is actually soccer to us. We learned about the unique foods they eat. One of the most unique foods they eat is tostones, which are a fried plantain. My favorite thing about Walnut Around the World was learning about all the different cultures and how they celebrate their holidays differently. In Australia, they celebrate Christmas in July. The reason they do that is because it feels more like wintertime then.
That was all of our presentation for the night. We truly want to thank you guys for allowing us to be here and share with you guys how we're implementing cultural diversity and inclusion into our building. The students were really excited, and we were excited too to be able to share this with you guys. And we hope that this helps other schools, other community members want to be involved and help continue to embrace differences. Thank you guys.
You guys all did such a great job. Thank you for sharing with us. Okay, our next item is 3C, public comments. My thing is not going. Nor is mine. I'm not as good as Leslie, and I don't have it memorized.
You just have to ask Casey for public comment.
Oh. Is there any public comment, Casey?
No, there are no public comments tonight.
Okay. As a reminder, anyone wishing to provide public comment should complete the request to submit comments form by 1 p.m. on Wednesday, the day of the board meeting. Next is the consent agenda.
I move that we adopt the consent agenda.
Second.
Oh, I'm sorry. We have to wait to be, that was too quick.
No, but now it's stuck on public comment again. Okay. Okay. The items listed on the consent agenda are considered by the Board of Education to be routine business items. Approval of the items may be made by a single motion, second, a majority vote with no separate discussion of any item listed. Should a member of the board desire to discuss any item at his or her request, it will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. What are the wishes of the board?
Okay, now I move to adopt the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second.
Is yours not coming up still? Okay. There it goes. Motion passes 7-0.
Okay, next is item 6A, the 2025-2026 updated academic calendar.
All right, well, they've been working with the calendar committee and have some recommendations. So we have Dr. Erica Mickelson, Director of Teaching and Learning, and Ms. Cheryl Leeds, Assistant Principal at Emporia High School.
Thank you. So last year, we brought the different calendars, and it was voted on that we were going to go with, at that time, it was the first, it was option 4, then it was option 2, and now this is our only option, the one that was voted on. We did have 2 areas, though, that we were tasked to look at. The first area was the first early release PLT day. That was due to the date and it being that first week of school, and then the semester lengths. So, Casey, if you'll go to the next slide. So we looked at the first early released PLT day, and we did move that from August 21st to August 29th. And that at least will give us that week a little bit more time to get into the swing of things, the swing of school, before we had that first early release day. And then we also looked at semester lengths. And first semester, we are looking at 79 days. Second semester, we're looking at 86 days. When we brought this to the Schedule and Calendar Committee, and that's why I asked Mrs. Leeds if she would be here to help speak about this, they didn't have a concern with that because during second semester, it's actually a good thing to have more days because we have things that come in like field trips and field days, athletic activities. You also have state testing and different assessments that you have during that time. And so really, giving those extra days is helpful, not hurtful as one might think. And then as far as the secondary level, when you look at individual plans of study, those are done by spring break, but it also allows that time to really spend with some of our students who need maybe a little extra time to get some of those things done. Did I leave anything off, Mrs. Leeds? Okay. And so really, when we looked at that, changing it was going to make it a little bit, I used the word wonky. I mean, it was just kind of going to seem a little fragmented if we did that with the ways the dates fell. So the recommendation from the Schedule and Calendar Committee was to keep it as it is. And you can see all the members of the Schedule and Calendar Committee on the next slide. Their work last year and then their work this year and continual work as we move forward. I jokingly tell them they're stuck with me for life on the Schedule and Calendar Committee. But they do great work and help just to bring that focus and their expertise in their area to the group. Questions?
I have a question, and I know it's not part of the new changes, but this calendar has a lot of split days, half-day kids in school. Is that, I don't know, for next year's calendar, do we have those, or is that a new thing that was put into the year after that?
The split days, so the early release days will go into the 25-26 calendar.
But it's been many years since we've kind of done it that way, I think.
Yes, correct.
But I know some districts do that.
Yes, and we will be working with the Schedule and Calendar Committee as well as district or the building leadership to determine what those days will look like. Teaching and learning is we're looking at start and end times and things like that. So all that information will come a little bit later.
Sure. Okay. Thanks.
I had a question about parent-teacher conferences, I guess, on October 29th and March 11th. Are we going to be doing evening parent-teacher conferences, or are they going to have, like, it will be a half day like usual those days, and then parent-teacher conferences will just be all day on the 30th and the 12th?
So looking at it right now, it wouldn't be a change from what's occurring at the current time.
Okay.
So that would be the same. The only real true change would be those early release PLT days.
Right. So I guess this year, do we offer parent-teacher conferences in the evenings now or no? Okay.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so is that like on the evening of the purple day?
Yes.
Okay, I'm with you now, yes.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
I don't have anything. I just appreciate all the work that was done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and thank you guys for being so willing to
it's
change
usually
things
like
too.
conferences for us are usually Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Thursday morning.
Thursday
so
morning,
that's
correct.
probably what it is.
Yes, yeah, it is. Yes, it
Yeah.
would be,
Yep.
Thursday morning, correct. Sorry, Purple Day is Thursday morning.
Okay, yes,
Yes.
that's what I was asking
Yes.
about.
So the
on the Purple
evening,
Day.
is not on the Purple Day.
Okay,
Right.
gotcha. Okay, yes. Yeah, and thank you all for your hard work and like the many iterations of this that you all put together. We really appreciate it.
Okay.
I move to approve the academic calendar for the 2025-2026 school year as submitted.
Second. Motion passes 7-0.
Okay, thank you to our calendar committee. Next is item 6B, kindergarten through fifth grade progress reports.
Well, we'd like to take this opportunity to welcome Mrs. Judy Stanley, Assistant Superintendent of Teaching, Learning, and Student Services back. Yay,
It's nice to
Judy.
see all of you. Thank you. It really is good to see all of you. We wanted to share with you some information about progress reports because we've made some changes and updates to the kindergarten through fifth grade for this upcoming year. So if we go to the next slide. Oh, there we are. Okay, I'm sorry. Go back. Yes, thank you. When we think about our progress reports, truly the purpose of them is to communicate to parents how are kids doing. At the elementary level, we really focus on the standards. So it's not an overall English or math grade. The standards are included. It's also to maintain that record of how a student is progressing in academics as we move through the school system. So it's helpful to the next teacher. So if I'm a fifth grade teacher, I can see a record of what did my students pass in fourth grade, what standards did they master. So that's really kind of the foundation that we're working from and the reason we made some of these changes. On this slide, what you see is the academic key that's been used on that progress report for years, at least 10 years, if not longer. And let me describe what that means. When it says a 4, it means exceeding Kansas standard. So what that might mean is if let's say I'm a first grader or a kindergartner and one of the standards is counting to 100, I can count to 500. That means I've exceeded the standard. It doesn't correlate with an A, but it tends to be what parents feel. Okay, they get a 4, they get an A. It doesn't correlate with the letter grades that we typically know of. The 3 is really where we want all students to be. 3 means I've met that standard. As we progress through the years, some standards we expect to be met in the first quarter, some the second, some the third. But overall, as long as the end goal at the end of the school year is a 3, that means that child has met the standard for the grade level. What a 2 means is I'm not quite to the standard yet, but I'm in progress. I should be able to master the standard by the end of the year. If I get a 1, then I am probably not making enough progress to meet that standard. Now, how we actually decide what rating to get is the teachers worked long and hard and are always adjusting rubrics. So every standard has a 1, 2, 3, or 4, and the teachers work together to say, well, what does a 4 look like? What does a 3 look like? Well, the 3 is easy, that's the standard. What does a 2 look like? So for example, if I'm a kindergartner and the standard is counting to 100, then at the end of the first quarter, I would expect that child to count to 25. If I get to 25 one quarter of the way through the year, I'm going to get a 2. If it's anything lower, then I'm probably going to get a 1. And basically that's how the progress report has worked. Every standard had a number, and every number had a rating. And typically those rubrics would change throughout the school year to meet that quarter. So what's the challenge to that? What we've discovered in visiting with our classroom teachers at the elementary and particularly at the middle school is that the rubrics aren't always very clear, particularly when you get to the upper grade levels, because sometimes it may say most of the time does that. Well, how I interpret most of the time might be different than how Dr. Mickelson interprets most of the time. And when you have, let's say, 15 fifth grade teachers and they're interpreting that differently, we may be sending students to the fifth grade with a different level of understanding, but it may look on their progress report they're all at a 3 or at a 2. So that was very difficult to maintain that consistency. Those ratings are not always clear to parents. As I shared, many parents look at it like the letter grades. A 4 is an A, a 3 is a B, a 2 is a C, and well, you'll notice we don't have enough numbers to match the letter grades. Sometimes parents are very upset when their child doesn't get a 4. They don't realize that 3 is really the goal. When the students transition to 6th grade, it's difficult for them and it's difficult for the parents. The students aren't used to a letter grade. They don't get it on the work that they get home. They don't really know what that means, what percent is an A. That it doesn't make sense to them. And again, parents may see that too. Means if I get a 2 at the end of 5th grade, it means I'm working toward that standard. They may not be that concerned about it. But in all actuality, probably should have some concern, because if at the end of the year they didn't master that standard, that means they're not quite ready with that standard for the next grade level. And then the 4th challenge is that concern from elementary to secondary. And I will say that has come from both levels, that the elementary teachers have recognized that's a concern, as well as and particularly the middle school. So we felt like we needed to address this. And so this summer, we brought the elementary lead teachers together. Dr. Mickelson and I worked with them, as well as the instructional coaches. And we identified what those challenges were. They brainstormed options. Within their grade levels, they talked about, well, what could an academic key look like? What does it need to be different for my grade level versus others? And then we shared as a whole to determine where we wanted to land. In particular, what we did say is it couldn't go like kindergarten couldn't have one key, and then 1st grade have a key, and then 2nd grade decide they like the kindergarten key. There had to be some continuity. Once they identified the key and they came to that consensus, they determined, well, what's the process for giving that overall grade in each domain? So instead of giving a rating for every standard, because there's a lot of standards, now they're going to give a rating for the overall domain. So it might be literature. So it gets a little bit more similar to what you might be at the 2nd grade level. I have English. Well, now we're going to take all the reading standards, and we might have literature. We may have fiction, but we'll give an overall rating for the domain. And then they narrowed the standards down. What they did is they took it down to the priority standards. What are the standards that these children really, really need to know as they go to the next grade level? The kindergarten key, this is what they came up with. And kindergarten key is a little bit different than everyone else's, because kindergarten's a little bit different than everyone else. The 4 means I'm working above benchmark, so that's very much like what we did before. 3 is I'm meeting benchmark. We changed the 2 to a making progress toward benchmark of current instruction. Because the way it was, if we really use that academic key correctly, then at the end of the year, you either got a 3 or a 1. You should have gotten a 3 or a 1 because you're not on progress to meet the standard. We felt very uncomfortable with that. So instead, we said we're making progress toward that next benchmark, or minimal progress. Now they're working on the rubrics to say, well, what is minimal progress? What is making progress? And then we obviously will have the mastery. So that's kindergarten. When we go to 1st through 5th grade, we're flipping to percents. Now it looks more like what you would see at the secondary level. There was lots of discussion between, well, should 4th and 5th grade go to letter grades? Do we want to stay with numbers? And in the end, they felt, since this was elementary and maybe to keep that continuity, we would keep the numbers, but we would have the percents, because it's very easy to explain to a parent. If your child received a 4, they're in that A-B range, because typical grading scales are 80 to 90 as a B, and you know the typical grading scale. So they felt like this was easier for parents to understand, and it is easier for them to explain. And they can also help their students understand how those percents work. Now, this is what a parent would see. This is just one portion of the 3rd grade progress report. I wanted to share that with you so you could see how it's divided up. And this is one that shares an example of how you would complete it. So you'll see that this domain is literacy development and reading comprehension. So you see the gray is where you'll get the rating. So if I'm just looking at quarter 1, this student would get a number 2, means I'm working toward, a number 2 is, where's my percents? Back on that academic key, a number 2 is a 60 to 69%. Okay? So then I go to if I'm a parent and I see a 2 and it's a 60 to 69, I'm going to be a little concerned. And so what you'll see is there's asterisks beside a couple of those standards. And what that means is those are the standards that your child is struggling with. That's why your child has a 60 to 69%. If there's nothing in the box, that means your child is doing exactly what they need to do for that standard. If there's an NA, it means we haven't taught that standard this quarter. We're not assessing on that standard. So it lets the parents know what I'm really struggling with. It gives them an overall rating for the entire area, and it aligns better with what we do at the secondary level. Now, with anything new, we have challenges. Everybody was really excited until you actually start doing the progress reports, because it's a huge mind shift. There's a lot of difficulty with our the way we've been doing it in the past. You could give one assessment, and that could be the rating that you gave. So it's a one and done versus a triangulation of data. And we are asking teachers to triangulate that data. We don't want students to have a one shot to get it right or not. So that's a bit of a mind shift. Figuring out how to collect those multiple points of data. What data do I use for this? We're still looking for mastery. It's not just an average of the whole 9 weeks. So those are some challenges that we have run into as we've gotten into the school year, and we've worked with the teachers. And so we've taken some steps to address those. We are going to continue to reiterate that this is about how to communicate with the parents and that transition to the secondary level. So we have to make a commitment to it. It's making it clear for our families and the teachers that will be getting the students. Lead teachers are identifying that points of data that the teachers can use to help get that grade, that rating. There was a survey that was conducted, and it went out to all elementary teachers to ask them, all right, we hear your struggles. Do you want to go back to the progress report we had last year, or do you want to move forward? 74% said we want to move forward. So we are moving forward because that was the majority of them. Some of the instructional coaches are offering optional meetings for teachers to join after school so they can provide some clarification and some guidance. There is an explanation document that's going home to parents prior to parent-teacher conferences so the teachers don't have to re-explain everything. So the parents will receive that, and we developed a guidance document for teachers on how to complete the progress report. So that, in a nutshell, that was a lot, is basically why we've made the changes and what we're looking at, with the hope that our communication and understanding for parents on their child's progress is much more clear. And what questions do you have for me?
What questions are there?
Does Erica have anything to add? I saw you standing up there. Either Erica? Okay. I remember, I think it was when my kids were, I think Sophia was out of elementary, but Calvin was in when it changed to the 4-3-2-1. And I do remember, having some struggles with that. But I did appreciate, I remember Lori Bishop and Mike Schoenberger that 5th grade year made sure to kind of show us what the grade equivalent was so that the kids were ready for 6th grade and it wasn't such a shock. But anything we can do to make it more clear for families and to give a more, like you said, triangulated data, more comprehensive picture, I think this is really great. It sounds like you did a ton of work on this.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I really do appreciate that academic key, because I think for those of us who are of an older generation, we're so used to like the 80 to 100, 60 to 69%, knowing what that means. So I really, like that you're also supporting parents so they can kind of visualize too. Also, it's really great to have you back.
Thank you.
Yeah, I really appreciate all the work that went into this, and I like that it gives a more robust picture of how students are doing, pinpointed down to each individual standard. I think that that's really helpful. I wonder, though, how long does putting together a progress report take? Like, for one individual student to go through each of these standards, how much time is that taking our staff?
It takes quite a bit of time. Not every quarter do you assess every standard, and when you look at the progress report, we actually decrease the number of standards that's on there, so that should help a little bit. Teachers, but that's not different than what they've been doing. They assess on the standards all of the time. So now it becomes more of how can we use Power Teacher to help us collect the data, keeps parents more informed on a regular basis, but doesn't become overwhelming for the teachers because, when I was in the classroom, we did do grades all the time, but the previous progress reports didn't require that adding all of the time. So this is a mind shift. It feels like a lot for our teachers. So we're trying to figure out what are the best ways to support them. But assessing the standards is not different than what we've been doing. It's more just keeping track of that data.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Okay, item 7A is board reports, and the Rec Commission has a report.
I do. The Rec Commission hasn't met yet. Our next meeting is the 21st of October for our regular meeting. We will probably have a special meeting. I think Monday is what we're potentially looking at, but it's not been set yet. But that'll be an executive session item, so there's not much for the public to see. And then I think Jamie may have some updates on behalf of the steering committee.
Yes, the steering committee for the rec center has been working really hard, and I, of course, have to just acknowledge all of the volunteers who've come together to work on this. As you all know, we chose a site to build at Champions Landing. This is all pending if the sales tax goes through next year. And then last week we met to actually look at designs of the building, and so that's the really fun part. So we're really enjoying kind of whittling it down to a couple of sites, and then we do have a community meeting next week at the Clint Boyer building for individuals to come and actually see like 3D models of what those designs look like, and to help us decide, which direction we want to go in.
Great, thank you, Rec Commission team. This is so exciting. I can't wait to see the models next week. Okay, item 7B is the KSB 2024 Constitutional Amendment discussion. Dr. Harder, did you have anything you want to add, or you want me to?
No, really, I think Art has more to add.
Okay, yep. Yeah, so just so that everyone is clear about this, and then I'll let Art have the floor. So, as you all know, I'm the delegate to the KSB Board Convention in November, and this year there is a proposed constitutional amendment change to KSB's Constitution, and I wanted to hear input from you all because when I vote as our delegate, I want that vote to be reflective of the wishes of this board. So there's an attachment in there that explains the proposed changes and why, and then I will let Art kind of go ahead.
Thank you. I am currently the KSB past president. That's a kind of 3-year role, so I have been involved in the higher level discussions around the changes that are being proposed, and basically it's more a reflection of our current practice, and really a lot of it is, kind of maybe a little bit boilerplate stuff that we're taking care of that we want to make sure it's correct. The biggest piece here that I've heard concerns about is the fact that at delegate assembly, you vote for the next KSB president-elect. So to get to that position, we have a nominating committee. The nominating committee usually is made up of volunteers from each of the regions that represent Kansas. So we've had trouble getting volunteers for that position. It's a big commitment. You have to come to Topeka. We like to do this in person. We do offer a Zoom option to Zoom into the meeting. And after some discussion with our organization and also with states when we go to conferences, I know I heard that other states have their executive director board make that nomination, do that vetting. So in order to kind of lighten the load a little bit on our board members across the state, we want to look at proposing that the executive board vets the nomination. So the concern that I heard and Lillian's kind of shared with me is that the nominating committee is one way to get involved with the KSB organization, so then you can kind of move up if you wanted to. So we hear that concern, and we're looking for ways to make sure that we can find opportunities to make sure board members who want to be involved can be involved and get that experience. And really, that's what we all want. We want people to be involved, volunteer, become part of the organization and the work that we do. We have lots of opportunities. We recently established the CAN network, which is an advocacy network that we use to go and talk with legislators in Topeka and just advocate for public education across the state. So we are aware of that concern, but that's the only concern. Really, I think at this time with our proposed changes, it doesn't change the fact that the only qualification you need to be nominated is that you're a current school board member in the state. But if we look at past history, it tends to be somebody that has served on the executive board. So again, kind of looking at practice and then, visiting with other states, we saw this was something that's pretty common. So we're just trying to make a change, see if that makes things better. So I'll answer any questions that somebody might have.
So I have some questions, and I am not as engaged with KASB as I think some of you are and have been. So if I'm coming from a base where it sounds like I'm making an assumption that's incorrect, tell me I'm wrong so I can learn. But how many terms does a president of KASB serve? One, or can they serve more?
You have one term, but it's 3 years. You're president-elect, then you're president, then you're past president.
Okay.
And you can serve. So if you're on the board, you can serve, it's a 3-year term, and you can serve 2 terms before you have to go off. And once you go off, then you can come back on, if there's room in the region.
Okay.
So.
The board of directors for KASB, I was looking at them online earlier. Are they all school board members and members of KASB?
Correct.
Okay. What are some of my other questions? So the way I read this, though, they would select the proposed nominee, and they would have the board of directors would have the authority to select one or more. So you could be in a situation where your actual delegate assembly only gets one choice, correct?
Correct. And that's been
that's
the
how it's
case
Right.
a lot of times.
Except for last year, then we had 2.
Right.
But previously, it's just been 1.
So in practice, the normal course of events is that there's only ever one person who runs, and it's not contested.
I'd say it varies from year to year.
Like, for example, when I was running, there was 2 people that were put forth. The other candidate lost their election, so then it was just kind of me by default.
So the way it currently works now, so I may be asking you to repeat yourself earlier, but the way it currently works now, does someone just, if I want to run, I find someone else, they nominate me, there's a nomination from the floor, you whip the votes beforehand, and then you vote, or do they go through the nominating committee first to even get to that point?
Correct.
Okay.
So if you're interested in being the president, then you're going to be talking to the association saying, hey, I'm interested in this position. And then that's where you'll be put into the list of the nominating committee would review. And so, yeah, the qualifications for that are not going to change. There is one change that we used to allow at the delegate assembly. Somebody could nominate themselves from the floor, kind of like, I don't know. Yeah, and we're not going to allow that anymore because I don't know that we've ever had that happen. So again, to reflect the current practice of what we've seen over time, that's not really happened. But
So as it works now, if 2 people went through the nominating committee, could the nominating committee veto one of them? You don't even get considered? Or do
potentially they could just put one
Okay.
forward, yeah.
Okay. One thing I thought when I was looking at this is it seems almost like a protective move. Is this in response possibly to something that happened in one state that was perhaps an issue, and is that why some of the organizations are doing this? Is there something more to it?
Isn't it just because no one wants to be on the nominating committee?
That's why I'm
Mostly.
asking.
I was on the
I don't feel
nominating
like there's
committee.
any, I felt like personally that there was any
People aren't
protection
volunteering.
behind it. I thought it was more, we were having trouble getting volunteers.
Yeah, it's because no one was volunteering. Because I was on nominating committee before you were president. And I think we only had like 3 applications. It's not like people are
Right.
banging down the door to be the KASB president.
And full disclosure, I'm thinking
So-
like a lawyer, what's really going on here? So I'm just trying to look a little
And
deeper.
my full disclosure is I have 0 problem with this.
Yeah, and I think the one thing I would add, because I really thought a lot about this and read about it, and I was sort of wary initially, but then I also thought, it's like any nonprofit board in a lot of ways where, we choose because I work at nonprofits, we choose our vice president and our president in this very same manner. Because you really do want someone in leadership who's kind of been on the board for a little bit, and not just someone who just comes out of nowhere, is brand new, and then you have to teach them how to be about the board while they're the board president.
Yeah, so I would say, just for full transparency of kind of what I was thinking earlier, and I have already talked with Art about this, is that the way that it's currently structured, whether this is in writing or just habit, is KSB's advice to get onto the board is to be a part of one of the committees. The 2 primary committees up until now have been the nominating committee and legislative committee. But you can't be on nominating committee if someone else from your region already is. So it creates a limited pathway for folks to get onto the board anyway to then select the president. Does that make sense to everyone? Yeah, and so that was my concern, is that I think that it creates just such a narrow path. And there's, I think it says in here, 2,000 school board members across the state, and I would like to see as many of them have representation in KSB as possible. So that's my concern. I don't know if there's thoughts about that.
So I'm being a lawyer, and I'm asking, because I don't have the actual proposed change to the text, what happens then if there's only one nominee and then something occurs? That nominee gets arrested, they, end up going into scandal, or they get canceled. How do you switch them out then?
Well, that's a good question. So usually what we would do is, in my experience, like, for example, you kind of have this order at some point. I had to take on an extra year to cover for somebody that wasn't elected again. So that's usually what it is. Somebody doesn't get elected, they're at the end, because if you serve, let's say you're in your 6th year and you decide to run for president, if you're not reelected, then you, as not being a board member anymore, you cannot serve in that capacity. So, so then we'll just, in one example, we had the past president serve for like 3 years as the past president because we kept losing somebody. And other times people decide, hey, I have other commitments, I can't serve on the school board anymore, so there's different reasons that might happen, but usually we find a volunteer, and we'll go back to the executive board to help solidify what direction we're going to go in, but yeah.
And I would think that this model would actually help with that possible situation, that if you're sort of building up your leadership from within, that you're kind of covered if there is, but the old system kind of didn't give you that same opportunity.
I have no more questions. Thank you for humoring me. I'm sorry.
Okay, I just kind of wanted to gather everyone's thoughts. The convention is not until November, as you all know, so, if you think about this later, we want to talk more about it, that's fine. Yeah, thanks, guys.
If I can actually see the text as it is now and what they're proposing to change, that'd be cool at some point. Is it? I didn't see it.
The changes, isn't it that?
Well, they're listed, it's listed as a summary. It's not the actual constitution of the KSB.
And also, I will say the legislative priorities will be coming out soon.
Okay, great. Thank you, everyone. That brings us to item 8A, district highlights.
Okay, well, we have a ton of wonderful things happening, but I just try to pull just a few to highlight. So, seems like forever ago, but we did have our second annual tailgate and our first Friday T-shirt. So, thank you for everybody for coming and taking pictures. Staff have been sharing that the T-shirts are also a great conversation starter when they see staff out and about on First Fridays, and they get to meet one another. So, that's a really cool just bonus. Homecoming, we had a great turnout. Thank you so much for board members who brought their spouses or sons and able to join us that evening. Vamos a Pescar on Saturday, September the 28th. Patricia Reyes and HOT hosted an event. Keeps growing every year, and it just keeps getting better and better. This year, they were not able to kayak because of just the water levels, but they were able to fish. And they had included virtual reality target shooting and archery. So just had some really great conversations with people. And then I think, Art, were you able to volunteer? So that was really nice, but it just grows more and more every year. One of the coolest things I would say this year is that the student spirit and pride that grows every single year. And so even though our football team may not be doing the best, we still see students out there cheering them on. They have theme nights. It's great to see everyone. Students at EMS volleyball meets, they've been very having strong spirit, cheering on their team, and also being respectful. So it's just been a great start to the year. Also, Walnut Multicultural Night, saw Art and Leslie there. I did love the food trucks, so that was a really cool experience. And then, Samantha Mesquite, yes, that is her married name. I went by Priya or her maiden name, but they just did a really, really great job, and there was a great parent turnout. And a high school teacher was talking at a football game. We were just talking about just the improvements to the facilities over just the last couple of years, and he said that he really sees a greater sense of pride from our students, and they want to take care of our facilities, so it's really nice, and they just have a better attitude and feel like that has really helped with everything, in addition to CKH and everything else. There was a Senate and House candidate forum, and Lillian did a great job Monday night, so cheering her on. And then through Capturing Kids' Hearts, our principals have cohort meetings every month, and so Janet Kingsley, who is our region leader, told us that we were the only district that had 100% attendance with all of our principals for September. So that was very, very nice to hear.
Hey, I love to hear all the great things that are happening. And when we were at Vamos a Pescar, Leslie and I checked out the walking path. That was great.
Super cool, and now Sam and I do that every Sunday morning. It's just so nice. I didn't know that was there.
Yeah.
It's crazy when you learn things about your own town. And I will add that my favorite part of Multicultural Night is Miss Emily Winter, who is a 5th grade teacher at Walnut now, was in my Girl Scout troop back in my PTO days at Walnut with Allison as principal. So that was a really special moment. So I just thought that was really awesome.
Okay, that brings us to 9A, executive session, consult with an attorney.
I move to enter into executive session for 10 minutes for the exception for matters which would be deemed privileged and the attorney-client relationship under Kansas Open Meeting Act, that we return to open session in this room at 7:04 p.m. Superintendent Dr. Allison Harder and Attorney Tammy Samoji are invited to join the board for this session. Action is not anticipated.
Motion passes 7-0.
Second.
Motion passes 7-0.
Okay. We'll go to item 9C, executive session, superintendent evaluation.
I move to enter executive session for 20 minutes to discuss the superintendent evaluation pursuant to the non-elected personnel exception under the Kansas Open Meetings Act, and will return to open session in this room at 7:26 p.m. No action is anticipated.
Second.
Motion passes
return to regular session.
Second.
Motion passes 7-0.
Okay. Next item is the future board calendar dates. So on October 15th at 7:30 a.m., the Rec Commission Steering Committee will meet here at Mary Herbert Education Center. Our next regular board meeting will be October 23rd at 6 p.m. here, followed by the next regular board meeting November 13th at 6 p.m. here, and then November 15th through 17th, we will be in Wichita for the KSB annual convention. I will take a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion passes 7-0.